Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD. It's good to be back here with you. I had to miss last week, so I apologize for those of you that tried to show up because I did not have a webinar. But it's good to be here tonight with you again. For those of you that are new to the webinars, the way these work is you get to create them with your questions. And the way you do that is you have to write your questions to me. And you do so by that chat box over on the bottom of your screen over there on the right-hand side. Write your questions to me through the chat box. I request that when you do that, though, that you only hit enter when the whole question is done. If you hit enter before your whole question is done, it actually creates multiple questions from my side that make it very difficult for me to post questions so you can see them. If you're participating in the live webinar tonight, you will actually get to see the questions as I read them because I actually post them on the screen. In the recorded versions of the webinar, though, that many of you listen to, they will not show up. So I will be reading those questions so everyone can hear them as well. I am creating a recording tonight of the webinar, and tomorrow morning, somewhere around 6:30 Seattle time, I will send out a copy of that recording via email so that you'll have a link of it in the email so that you can get access to it as well. So if you happen to miss something tonight, just know that there is going to be a recorded version of it. As long as everything goes okay with it and I don't have any technical problems, I'll have that recorded version for you. It's something I have to edit tonight and get ready and get to you tomorrow morning. I do anticipate taking next week off. And then after that, we'll be into the March series of the webinars. And so tomorrow morning, you'll be able to sign up also for the next 3 of the webinars that I host too. Okay, so with no further ado, the other thing is, to those of you that are here again, welcome back. I see many familiar names. Excuse me, I also see a number of new faces tonight too. So, or names tonight. I actually can't see your faces here, but I do see your names. I get a list of people that are participating. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. And this is our first question. Hello, Oscar. Let's see. Treating Babesia, Lyme, and Bart for past 9 months. Currently on Bactrim, Tindamax, and minocycline. Feeling great aside from twitching while resting, falling asleep, and occasional heart palpitations, shortness of breath, and insomnia. Wonder if these could be due to nerve damage or acid reflux. Let's see. Let me answer that. All right. So in terms of, Oscar, just a few comments about your treatment. So in terms of Babesia, Lyme, and Bartonella, the current regimen you have of Bactrim and minocycline, those two together are very effective against Bartonella. And usually I'm going to treat for Bartonella for 4 to 6 months. And if you're all looking for other ideas that I have for treating Bartonella, because there are other ones, take a look at the Treat Lyme book, which many of you signed up through that site for tonight's webinar. And there's a chapter I have on called Infection Treatment Plans. And in there's an article called Kills Bartonella, a brief guide in which I outline a number of options you have to treat Bartonella. But usually it takes 4 to 6 months. And a regimen with Bactrim in it is very good. And then Bactrim is starting to have is an interesting antibiotic in that there are some Petri dish experiments that show that when it's added to a regimen, that it can help with persister Lyme, which is a version of Lyme where when Lyme is exposed to antibiotics, we're starting to see on Petri dish experiments that Lyme has the ability to turn into persisters. And what a persister cell is, it's a form of a spirochete or a form of a cyst that slows its metabolism way down to the point it just starts ignoring the antibiotics, okay? And Bactrim seems to be something that's good for that. I'm in the process of putting information together to talk more about a new article in the Treat Lyme book about persister cells and what you can do for it. But some of the regimens do have Bactrim in there, so that can be helpful for your Lyme. And then in terms of Lyme, minocycline treats intracellular Lyme, spirochete Lyme, Tindamax treats the cyst form of Lyme, and removes biofilm. So it's a good regimen for that. Now, since you've been under treatment already, somewhere along here, maybe somebody took care of Babesia, but I would not call this a Babesia treatment, okay? Let's see here. So you're having heart palpitations, shortness of breath, and insomnia. So one thing I would say is the shortness of breath and the heart palpitations could be due to Babesia. And if you have not had Babesia treated, that could explain why. Medicines that treat babesia would include things like malorone, mepron, larium, coartem, the herbs artemisinin, and the herb also called cryptolepis. So if you haven't been on any of those, it may be that that is why you're having these symptoms. In terms of could it be due to nerve damage or reflux, I wouldn't think that these kind of symptoms would be due to nerve damage or reflux, though. Okay. All right. And then Oscar, I see a second part to your question. Let me go find that real quick. Let's see. What do you think about IV gentamicin and IV doxycycline? Love learning from your website, and thank you so much for your time and help. Oscar, you're welcome. So I don't use IV gentamicin. I know some of my colleagues will do it. I just don't have enough experience to say whether I think it's useful or not. IV doxycycline I really do like. It's an effective treatment for both spirochete and intracellular Lyme. I usually will dose it at 400 milligrams IV over 2 hours. Now, sometimes that scares the pharmacist. They think that's a little bit too quick to give it because there's some concern it could hurt the kidneys, but I have never found that to be a problem. And the way that the tetracyclines work best, like a doxycycline, is if you get a high peak dose. So you have to take a lot all at once. That's going to do a better killing than to take a slow or to take lower doses periodically. All right. So I like 400 milligrams one time a day when I do my IV doxycycline. All right. All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck to you, Oscar. Bear with me here, everyone. I'm just removing Oscar's questions from the list here so I don't go back to them again. All right. Let's see here. This is from Sheila. Let's see. Hi, Sheila. It's interesting. You're talking about persister cells. It seems generally understood that Lyme has persister cells and can often relapse. Do the co-infections also have persister cells? I have read that you aren't supposed to donate blood if you have ever had babesia, for example. So, Sheila, this whole idea about Lyme and persister cells is something that's starting to get attention within the last year or two. In any of the literature that I have seen, I have not seen any information that says that babesia or Bartonella also have the ability to develop persister cells. No one's been pursuing that line because generally when it comes to, in my experience, is that about 95% of the time we treat Bartonella or 95% of the time we treat babesia, we get rid of it, okay? And sometimes it can take 2 times or so, but generally those are germs that we can get rid of. It's Lyme that is the problem, and that most of us that treat Lyme recognize that even after you do antibiotics for Lyme, even at the end of treatment, there is a good chance that at some point you're going to relapse again. And so I don't believe that when we treat somebody that has Lyme and has been in them for a year or more, I don't believe we ever get rid of the germ. I think the best we're doing with antibiotics is to get it under control so that your immune system and other work that you've done can help keep that germ under control. Okay? Now, the research, though, is showing, at least on Petri dish experiments, and this is the problem here, okay? It's Petri dish experiments. No one's done the studies in humans yet to see if this is true, okay? But in Petri dish experiments, some of the experiments are suggesting that around 20% of Lyme germs do have the ability, when they've been exposed to antibiotics continuously, to become a persister cell. And again, what a persister cell is a form of the germ that slows its metabolism way down to the point it just starts ignoring the antibiotics, okay? Now, there's only one in-human experiment that has been done looking at an antibiotic that can help with persister Lyme, and that is an experiment that was done by Horowitz. Many of you may be familiar with it. That was published, I think, in November or December of 2016. And Horowitz basically put people on a drug known to treat persister cells called dapsone. It's used in treating leprosy, and that's why he came up with the idea. He thought maybe I could try this on Lyme and see if it would help. And he's done experiments on 100 people in his practice that showed that, yeah, people can get benefit from being on it, okay? I will tell you my experience of dapsone is it's a very harsh drug to use, and I've had a hard time getting people to be able to do that part of the treatment, but I am using it, and it's a little bit early for me to report back to you whether I think it's a successful drug or not. The other doctor that's doing a lot of work about persister cells these days in Lyme is a physician out of Johns Hopkins called Dr. Zhang, and Zhang has been doing a number of pieces. But his stuff is all Petri dish experiments, and he's looking at trying to find effective drug combinations that can treat persister Lyme, and he's come up with some. The trouble is his main one, which is something that uses daptomycin, cefparazone, and doxycycline, is not easy. You can't use it here in the States. So for instance, cefparazone is not available here in the States, and daptomycin is an IV antibiotic that's approved for skin infections, but it won't be approved by insurance to use to treat for Lyme. So even though that has been shown, and many of you have run across his articles that say that's a good treatment, it's not available, okay? So he's trying to come up with some other ones, and some of the other research that he has done shows that maybe a combination of cefuroxime, which is a replacement for cefparazone, which would work really well, I think I've got that correct. I may be messing up my drugs here, but cefuroxime coupled with Bactrim coupled with doxycycline can be effective against persister cells too. And that's a combination I've been starting to work with a number of patients in my practice on. And I hope to eventually be able to report back to you whether I'm seeing benefit from that at all or not. All right. So those are just my thoughts. It is an interesting field. Most of it is petri dish at this point. We really don't know if this is the thing that's going to save people from Lyme ultimately or not. But it is a very fascinating area that there's starting to be a lot of attention given to. But it applies to Lyme, probably not to Babesia and to Bartonella. All right. Thanks for that question, Sheila. Hello, Victoria. Let's see. If 70% of the immune system is in the gut, how do you avoid leaky gut and have a strong immune system if on long-term antibiotics? Also, can you take minocycline with Cemento and Banderol? I think that's what you mean by S and B. And does Cemento and Banderol cause leaky gut? Thank you. All right. So everyone, Cemento and Banderol, let me just tell you what that is first. Cemento is cat's claw, the herb cat's claw, and Banderol is an extract from a tree called the Atoba tree, all right? And those two herbal antibiotics are my favorite herbs for treating Lyme because they work about 85 to 90% of the time. Many of you who have attended these webinars know I talk about them. Their chances of helping your Lyme get rid of Lyme is as good as prescription antibiotics, okay? So I like that. And I've written articles about it in the Treat Lyme book. If you're wondering more about Banderol Cemento, there are articles there that you can take a look at, okay? I started using Banderol Cemento based on some Petri dish experiments by a physician named Eva Chapi, that's S-A-P-I. And her experiments showed good killing of Lyme and also removal of biofilms. That was about 6 years ago, and I've been using it since then with great success, all right? So those are good antibiotics for that. Now, can you use minocycline with Cemento and Banderol? Yeah, you can. It may not be necessary, though. What I will tell you is periodically I will use intracellular antibiotics with Banderol Cemento. So intracellular antibiotics are ones that get inside of the cells, all right? That would be any of the tetracyclines like tetracycline, doxycycline, minocycline, or the macrolides, which are Biaxin, also known as clarithromycin, and Zithromax, also known as azithromycin. All right, so one of the potential problems with the Cemento and Banderol that can be addressed by minocycline is even though the Petri dish experiments show that it can wipe out Lyme, there isn't the ability on a Petri dish experiment to look inside of the cell and see, is it really getting rid of intracellular Lyme? We just don't know, okay? So there is a potential weakness of Banderol Cemento, and minocycline and Biaxin, Zithromax, doxycycline, tetracycline may fix that. So sometimes in my practice, when I use Banderol Cemento and I see that somebody's gotten better to a point and then they plateau, I may add a minocycline or a Biaxin into the treatment and continue the Cemento and Banderol because it may be picking up intracellular Lyme that is missed by the Cemento and Banderol, all right? Now, for those of you that are new to the webinars here, I need to step back here for a minute. You need to realize that Lyme exists in 3 separate forms in the body, okay? So it lives as a spirochete, which is that corkscrew-looking thing, as intracellular Lyme inside of your cells, and as a microscopic cyst form of the germ too. All right, so we need to treat all 3 forms, all right? And the Banderol Cemento, I think, does that, although again, we don't have proof that it does for the intracellular kind, okay? All right, now, Do prescription antibiotics do more damage to the gut than what herbal antibiotics do? Yes. Okay. However, I have found that Banderol Cemento also sometimes lead to too many yeast in the intestines, meaning that even they have the ability to disrupt the healthy balance of good bacteria in the intestines. Not to the same degree that I find prescription antibiotics do, but yes, they can. All right. So, what is leaky gut? Well, leaky gut is basically what happens in leaky gut is you have the inside of the intestines, you've got one layer of cells, and then you have blood vessels down here, and then you got a bunch of immune cells between the cells that line the intestines. There's a bunch of immune cells, and then you have your blood vessels. Okay, so you got inside of intestines where the poop and undigested food is, one layer of cells that blocks this stuff from getting into the bloodstream, and then all these immune cells. All right. Now, these cells that line the intestines are supposed to touch up tight. There's supposed to be no gaps. Okay. Now, what can happen though is, and the way that things get into the bloodstream then is they get absorbed into these cells, they get passed through these cells, through all the immune cells, and then into your blood system. All right. That's how a healthy functioning intestine is supposed to work. In leaky gut syndrome, what happens is these cells plump up and pull apart. And when they do, you wind up getting incompletely digested food that gets through those gaps and hits all of those immune cells, triggering those immune cells to release inflammatory chemicals and histamines, and people can even develop food allergies that way as well too. And Victoria is correct, although it's about 60% to 70% of the immune system lines the gut. And so in terms of treating Lyme, the best you can do, even when you're on prescription antibiotics or when you're on herbal antibiotics, is dump a lot of probiotics in and do your best to keep yeast under control. Okay, that's the best you can do. There is probably going to be some degree of leaky gut, though, during antibiotic treatment and even herbal antibiotic treatment. And the best you can do is try to keep up. Okay. Now, if you start getting really bad leaky gut syndrome, there are some things that you can do. And I actually, rather than take the time now, there's actually a whole article that I have written about what steps do you take to treat leaky gut if just putting probiotics in and getting yeast under control is not enough. What are the additional steps you take if you start developing problems? All right. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here. I think I'm going to do a quick screen share here. Hold on here, everyone. I'm having a complication. Let's see here. There we go. Let's try it. All right. Let me get over there. Okay. So this is the Treat Lyme book. And in terms of finding, so to navigate the Treat Lyme book, you can either look at the chapters tab or you can search for an article by clicking on the search tab up here. Okay. And in the chapters tab, in terms of leaky gut, take a look at the, I think I have my article on leaky gut in the stomach and intestines chapter. Let's see here. There it is. Leaky gut syndrome, a treatment guide. Okay. Take a look at this. It gives you the details and the various things that you would want to do to treat and to deal with leaky gut syndrome. And that one was updated in February 2016. Okay. All right. The other thing I want to just mention here while I'm here is in terms of recommendations I have for treating Bartonella and Babesia, you would find in the infection treatment plans chapter, and then take a look at the article called Kills Babesia or the other article called Kills Bartonella if you're looking at what I consider to be effective treatments. All right. And then finally, in terms of Banderol and Cemento, you're going to find that in a chapter called Anti-Germs, here, down here at the bottom, Anti-Germs, RX, and Herbs. And should be here somewhere. There it is. Otoba bark extract, and cat's claw tinctures. Okay, you would want to take a look at this article for information about using these 2 herbs to treat the Lyme infection. All right, so let's go back here. Okay, there you go, Victoria. Thank you for that question. Hello, Chris. Let's see. Thank you for taking time to help us with Lyme. You're welcome. What do you recommend for muscle tightness? Is it caused by cytokines? Also, as with probiotics, should all supplements be taken a certain length of time away from antibiotics? If so, how long? All right, so what I like to use for muscle tightness is magnesium, is my frontline treatment that I'll try. And the form of magnesium, so magnesium comes in a number of different salt forms, okay? So you can get it as magnesium citrate, or you can get it as magnesium malate, or also known as magnesium malic acid, magnesium sulfate. All right, what I find to be the most effective for muscle tension and muscle pain is magnesium malate, also known as magnesium malic acid. All right, and I usually have people take, it usually comes as a 150 or 200 milligram pill, depending on which brand that you're buying. I'll have a person take around 400 milligrams or so at bedtime. The reason I have them do it at bedtime is it also can make you sleepy, so it can help with the insomnia that many people with Lyme have. All right. Your limiting factor on magnesium is that if you take higher amounts, it may lead to diarrhea. All right, so if you get diarrhea, then decrease the amount of dose. I even have some people sometimes take up to 600 milligrams of it too. All right, so that would be the frontline thing I would do in terms of a supplement. Now, the other thing that you should have your doctor take a look at or consider is, do you have low thyroid? So thyroid, being low thyroid or high thyroid sometimes can give muscle spasm problems as well too, all right? Is this caused by cytokines? Well, yeah, the cytokines create a lot of the problems that a person has in Lyme and a lot of the symptoms. And so ultimately under all of this is the inflammation of the cytokines that many of you know I talk about. Now, in terms of magnesium, let's see, your other part of your question is, should all supplements be taken away from antibiotics? No, not necessarily. In fact, most can be taken with your antibiotics, except you cannot take calcium or dairy with doxycycline, minocycline, or tetracycline. All right, take them about 2 hours apart. And magnesium cannot be taken with Zithromax or with Biaxin at the same time, because it decreases their absorption too. And so you want to take that at least 2 hours away. Okay, so it all really depends on the supplement, but the majority of the supplements can be taken directly with your antibiotics. Okay, all right. Thanks for that question, Chris. Good luck to you. Hello, Sarah. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Is Teasel a good substitute for Cemento? Is herbal therapy able to treat neuro-Lyme? Thanks very much. So, Sarah, so everyone, what Sarah's asking about is an herb called teasel root. And so my favorite combination of herbs to try first, if you can tolerate them, is Cemento and Banderol, right? Now, Cemento, for some people, there is a problem. They either have side effects of nausea or diarrhea, for instance, or sometimes Cemento has a progesterone effect, and it can give you bloating, like progesterone can. Sometimes it can give a lot of acne lesions and pimples too. So there are some people that can't tolerate the Cemento. In that kind of a situation, I think that Teasel is a good substitute. I don't find it to be as great of a combo as doing Cemento with Banderol, but Teasel along with Banderol can be an effective combination. I think it may work more like the 70-ish% of the time, all right? So it's not quite as good, and I'm just giving you what my observation says. This isn't based upon research, okay? If you do Teasel root, you want to take it, you also want to work up to 30 drops twice a day. I usually have people start at 5 drops twice a day and increase by 1 drop every other day until they work up to the 30 drops twice a day. And you can take it directly at the same time with the Banderol as well too, all right? Now, do herbs work as well in neuro-Lyme? You know, My general sense, well, it depends on what you mean by neuro-Lyme, all right? So everyone, when you've had Lyme in you for at least 48 hours, it's crossed into the brain. So most people, everyone, by the time I see them, has neuro-Lyme, all right? So if you're describing neuro-Lyme being confusion and cognitive dysfunction, I think for that, the herbs work great. I think they get in well enough to deal with that. If by neuro-Lyme you mean Parkinson's Lyme or multiple sclerosis Lyme or Lou Gehrig's disease Lyme or severe dementia Lyme, meaning like Alzheimer's Lyme, and that kind of a situation, I think prescription antibiotics work better. I think they have a better chance of crossing over the blood-brain barrier. Okay? All right. So I hope that gives you the information you need there, Sarah. Good luck to you. Thank you for that question. Hello, Judy. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Russ. Love your Lyme book. Subscribed at first look. Thanks, Judy. I have Lyme. My natural doctor has me on Banderol, Cemento, Stevia, and Doxy. I'm just starting. Do you think this is enough meds? Thank you. So, Judy, I did a couple thoughts. So I think, again, the Banderol Cemento, in terms of killing all three forms of Lyme germ, is going to do great and can remove a layer of slime that covers Lyme called biofilms, okay? Now, I just want to say something about biofilms as a side note here. When people have Lyme, I know some of my colleagues always make sure they put somebody on people on things that are quote unquote anti-biofilm, all right? But to be honest with you, even prescription antibiotics break down biofilms to various degrees, all right? And in fact, according to Eva Choppy, I mentioned her earlier about the Banderol Cemento experiments, she did Petri dish experiments looking at various prescription antibiotics and what they do with biofilms. And she shows, I think, like doxycycline gets rid of 70% of biofilms, Flagyl gets rid of 70%. They all have a degree that they get rid of biofilms. So it is not important for everyone that you go directly on something that is a targeted anti-biofilm, okay? So Banderol Cemento get rid of 100% of biofilm. Stevia, according to Eva Choppy, this is Eva Choppy, she's like doing some of the most cutting edge research, I think, in Lyme right now. Eva has shown that stevia, which is a plant that we can use as a natural sweetener, it's not sugar, on her Petri dish experiments, she shows that it breaks down biofilms too, and that it can treat persister cells, all right? The trouble is with her experiments is these are Petri dish. And as I have an article up about stevia, but I'm having limited success with it. I don't think it's that well absorbed into our bloodstream to deal with Lyme. It doesn't mean I don't say to try it, but I'm not finding it to be the most effective thing to deal with persister Lyme or even biofilms, okay? So do I think you're on an effective regimen to kill Lyme? Yes, I would say that. Okay. Now, if you're saying that, are you doing everything you can to deal with Lyme? No. And the reason I say that is it is not just about killing your germs in Lyme. You have to correct a lot of problems created by the syndrome of too many cytokines created by having Lyme that ultimately interfere with your immune system and your ability to heal, okay? So what I mean by that is whenever your white blood cells see Lyme germs or yeast or any other infection, they release these chemicals called cytokines. Cytokines are good and bad. On the good side, they turn the immune system on, they cause more white blood cells to be made, they draw them to where the infection is, and they help them work better. Okay, that's great, all right? But in Lyme, often the immune system doesn't do a good job, or in mold toxin illness, the immune system doesn't do a good job getting rid of them, makes too many cytokines, or in yeast, the immune system doesn't do a good job and ultimately makes too many cytokines. And in Lyme, if the immune system isn't doing a good job, it keeps trying harder and harder, and it makes too many cytokines, okay? So I just listed out here things also that create too many cytokines, mold syndromes and yeast can and Lyme. All right, syndromes of too many cytokines all look the same. Lyme symptoms are symptoms of too many cytokines, okay? And excess cytokines suppress your immune system. And so we need to do things to correct the effects of those excess cytokines. So to do that, take a look at my free treatment protocol, all right? And so I'm gonna just do a quick screen share here to show that to you because you wanna look at some of the other ideas in here if your naturopath is not currently helping you with these, all right? So let me do a screen share. All right, bear with me here. There we are. Okay, so this is back in the Treat Lyme book. And this is tab up here is my treatment guideline or treatment protocol. And I call it the successful treatment recipe. And read through this because it gives you all the things you want to address during your Lyme treatment, okay? So first of all, get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. The reason you want to do that is ultimately it lowers cytokines, all right? And again, I said cytokines will suppress your immune system when they're made in excess, okay? Number 2, I recommend people try a paleo-type diet first and see if you do better on it, all right? Now, I have to tell you, not everyone does well on a paleo-type diet, but I find for the most part, it helps support your energy factories called mitochondria. It helps support nerve tissues, and it's low carb, therefore it's going to tend not to feed your yeast in your intestines. So it's a way of limiting leaky gut syndrome too, okay? Number 3, lower cytokines directly by being on curcumin, or there's other things that will do that too, all right? Number 4, I like to have people use ashwagandha to support their immune system. Number 5, correct any hormonal problems. The excess cytokines basically interfere with the correct functioning of your brain and its ability to direct your hormone systems. And so sometimes we need to substitute and give you things for those. And so I tell you how to do that here. Number 6, be on a good multivitamin. Number 7, if you've got yeast in you, get them out, because if you have too many yeast in your intestines, they trigger more cytokines, okay? And in this section here of my treatment protocol, there is a screening questionnaire you can click. And if you click on that, fill it out. If you score over 140, I have found good benefit in treating for too many yeast in that kind of a situation, okay? And here we are, part 8. The 8th thing I have somebody do is kill their Lyme germs, all right? So look at this. The other 7 things, don't forget to do them, all right? All right, and then the other things you need to look at is some basic detox steps. I talk about that here. Treat your co-infections if you have them, and exercise, all right? So these are just some things. Take a look at this full treatment protocol. Any one of you that's treating your Lyme, those are the basic steps you need to do to get well to support your immune system, okay? Just killing your germs isn't going to do it, all right? So Judy, I hope that helps you, and good luck to you too. The other thing too, I just want to say, I just, before joining the webinar tonight, I was taking a look over at my Facebook page where I had recently posted an article about the new DNA connections test. And I was just really shocked to read the number of negative comments that people are having about having to pay for access to the Treat Lyme book. So first of all, you know, I run these webinars for free, but part of the reason I support that I'm able to do this is I have these supports that I have. And so these webinars are supported by the fees that you pay for the Treat Lyme book, okay? I love helping people, but it takes a lot of time to maintain that book, to come up with ideas, to write articles, to research them, etc. And I don't think people get it. So for those of you that are actually paying for the Treat Lyme book and recognize the tremendous resource it is, thank you. And I wish that you would spread the word, that you would let others know too, so they can get help. Because if you're reading on Facebook, you would just never come over and take a look at this, and you would miss the advantages that it has. And I charge because it takes a lot of time to maintain this resource, and I charge because it helps cover the cost of these free webinars that I do as well too. All right. So anyhow, just had to make that comment. All right. Thanks, Judy. Good luck to you. Let's see. I think you got a second question here. Let me see. I usually only take one per person, but let me just take a quick look here and see if it's quick. Let's see. My doctor has thought about taking me off statins, so we added grapefruit seed extract to my Lyme treatment. Have you had to do that with any of your patients? Do you have any ideas of what I could take for the statin for cholesterol? So I'm not sure why so statins are a prescription class, everyone, that treats high cholesterol and often could lead to muscle weakness. I don't like using them, actually. I am not sure why your provider thinks that you can use grapefruit seed extract as a substitute. I'm not aware that that has anything to do with cholesterol. There are, in terms of other ways of treating high cholesterol, things that can be looked at are to be on fish oil, which can help lower cholesterol. You can be on something called red yeast rice extract. That can be helpful, and something called gugolipid can sometimes be helpful too. But I don't have specific articles about that, but talk to your naturopath about that as well. All right. Thanks, Judy. Hello, Sarah. Let's see. I'm postmenopausal and taking estrogen and progesterone in part because of the possibility of my Lyme brain not reading hormone levels correctly. When testing these hormone levels, what would you consider normal levels, especially for estradiol and progesterone? So, boy, I don't know these numbers off the top of my head, Sarah, and I would need to look actually at the lab report, the individual lab report, and see what their normal ranges are, and then I could give a better sense of that. So I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be able to give you a good answer here right now. All right, thank you. Hello, Val. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. What are your thoughts on the use of CBD hemp oil to alleviate severe Parkinson-like symptoms? So CBD, everyone, is an oil that can be found in that comes from the marijuana plant, but also comes from hemp plants as well. All right. When it comes from a marijuana plant, it actually tends to be of a higher quality and probably more effective than that is derived from hemp oil. But CBD derived from marijuana is only available to those residents that live in states where they have legalized medical marijuana. All right. Hemp oil, because it doesn't have marijuana restrictions here in the States, is sold online, right? You can buy it on Amazon if you want to. The only problem I have with it is I don't find it to be quite as effective as medical grade CBD that comes from marijuana, okay? So CBD, everyone, in the case of marijuana, is an oil that comes from the green parts of the plant, so from the leaves and the stems, versus marijuana, recreational marijuana, is when we smoke it or we eat it, is you're using the bud, the flower of the plant, all right? That is rich in a chemical called THC, all right? When you use the green parts of the plant, that's rich in CBD, but there will always be a little bit of THC mixed in with the CBD, all right? CBD tends not to give you the high, and so therefore it's more tolerable for people. Both THC and CBD have the same general medical benefits, and that is they can kill Lyme, according to some petri dish experiments. I don't think they're the greatest killers. I haven't seen great benefit in somebody's treatment in terms of killing capacity, but they technically can, okay? And they help alleviate a lot of symptoms, all right? They can help alleviate muscle spasms, tremors, like in the case of Parkinson's, the flat affect, the flat face, the flat emotionless face. I have seen them help with that as well, too. That you sometimes get with Parkinson's, the shuffle that you sometimes get with Parkinson's, they can help with. They can help with nausea, weight issues, pain, all of these things that affect us in Lyme, CBD is able to help. The issue I have is if you happen to be in a state where you can actually get medical marijuana, or in a Canadian province where you can get medical marijuana CBD, that's the better way of going. It's a higher quality. All right? All right. Thank you, Val. Good luck to you. Hello, Sheila. When would someone need Explore IVIG as part of Lyme treatment? Well, that's a tough one. IVIG, everyone, stands for intravenous immunoglobulin, or it's intravenous antibodies. And they're, in terms of when it would be covered, insurance is your big obstacle here. All right. It's extremely, extremely costly. And insurance recognizes it as a treatment for something called small fiber disease, all right? And a small fiber disease means that if you do a skin biopsy, you see damage to the small nerve fibers, okay? So they'll recognize it for that. So you have to have a skin biopsy that shows that you have small fiber disease. Or they will do it in, sometimes they'll do it for patients that have severe immune suppression documented in ways that usually don't show up in Lyme, all right? So it's hard to get it covered, all right? So it's very costly. Secondly, IVIG has great risk. And so it is gathered from multiple donors to get one treatment, all right? And so even though, and it's a blood product, all right, so they're donating blood and then they pull the antibodies out. So there is a risk of picking up infections. Even though they're screened for HIV and they're screened for all kinds of things, there still is the risk of picking up infections. And here you already have Lyme. I don't know that it's a good risk, okay? Now, the other thing that, because it is a blood product made from multiple people, it is very common to have allergic type reactions or immune reactions as it's being infused. And so often you have to give steroids while it's done, which is not good to do in Lyme either, all right? All right, so with all of that as background, can it help? I think it can, but I think I would only use it, I think, if many other things are exhausted. If you've done all the various ways of doing antibiotics, if you've taken care of all those steps that I outline in the successful treatment recipe, and then you even looked at part 13 of the successful treatment recipe, where I describe the various things to consider if you're not getting better, do all those first. If that doesn't work, then consider IVIG. I would do it kind of as a last resort because it's financially costly. I think there's risk in doing it. And I think there may be other ways of moving treatments forward without having to do that. All right. All right. Those are my thoughts. Thanks, Sheila. Hello, Sarah. Many thanks again, Dr. Ross. You're welcome. I have sharp, severe joint pain in my hips and knees. Will Biaxin alone get deep enough to have an effect? I was prescribed Plaquenil, but I'm afraid of the possible side effects. What to do? So, Sarah, in terms of joint pains, whether it's knee pain, finger pain, hip pain, that can be due in part to Lyme, leading to inflammation in the joints. All right. Now, so to ultimately deal with that pain, you got to kill Lyme and knock it down. And so any of the treatment protocols that involve killing germs are going to eventually help. The problem is they're not going to help right away. So the other things you need to, so the other thing about antibiotics, in addition to being germ killers, all antibiotics to some degree are also anti-inflammatory. All right. They can lower inflammation as an effect of the antibiotic. My experience says the best ones for anti-inflammation are the tetracyclines. I think they are better anti-inflammatory agents than what Biaxin is, right? So one thing you could consider doing instead of doing Plaquenil, see if your provider would switch you over to like a doxycycline or a minocycline, all right? In addition, be on herbal anti-inflammatories that lower cytokines. And that would be to do something like curcumin, which many of you know is one of my favorite anti-cytokine agents. Curcumin is a derivative of turmeric, the Indian seasoning turmeric. I like having it taken as a liposomal or fat-based variety. And the reason I like the liposomal variety is it increases its absorption if you microscopically wrap in fat. If you don't microscopically wrap in fat, it may not be well absorbed, okay? And so the product I like is a Thorne product called Mariva 500. It is microscopically wrapped in fat curcumin, all right? 500 milligrams 3 times a day. The other thing that can sometimes be helpful, especially if you have a lot of inflammation, is to use brown seaweed, which also helps lower cytokines through a different mechanism. And that is, brown seaweed is also known as Eclonia cava. Allergy Research has a product called Fiber Boost, which is the Eclonia cava. And that would be 2 pills twice a day if you were to do that, okay? So those are just some thoughts of things you can try. And so get on a good anti-inflammatory antibiotic. Give treatment a chance to lower that inflammation by killing enough germs. But then you can use the curcumin and use Fiber Boost as good anti-inflammatory agents that may be able to help you, and you wouldn't have to do the Plaquenil. All right? All right. Let me just show you something here real quick because I just want to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. All right. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here. At least I'm going to try to do a quick screen share. All right, so back in the Treat Lyme book. Okay, so if you're looking for ideas about what to do for inflammation, take a look in the Treat Lyme book in the chapters and take a look at the chapter called Herxheimer and Cytokines. Okay, remember, inflammation in Lyme is due to cytokines. Okay, and then take a look at this article called Control Cytokines, A Guide to Fix Lyme Symptoms and the Immune System, all right? And the reason I built the immune system part into this is that the excess cytokines that I have described also suppress the immune system. So if you can lower them, not only are you getting help with your to get pain and inflammation under control, but you also get better effective function of the immune system too. Okay, all right. So let's go back here again. All right. Thanks for the question, Sarah, and good luck to you. Hello, Charlene. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have a portable sauna, head stays out question. Would that make the spirit keys go to my head? I use it for 20 minutes, 5 days a week. Great for aches, soreness, and good to detox some since I have the genetic defect about removing toxins. Thank you so much. Okay, so when Charlene, I'm just going to explain a few things, I think, to clarify for others what's happening with your question here. So when Charlene says she has the genetic defect about removing toxins, it may be she either has something called an MTHFR defect, or she has a defect described by Richie Shoemaker, Dr. Richie Shoemaker, called an HLA-DR defect, where she's not able to remove Lyme or mold toxins, okay? If you want to read more about both of those defects, I will show you in an article later where you can take a look at that. For those of you that are not familiar with either one of those concepts and what I'm talking about, this all sounds like foreign language to you. You ought to take a look at those two articles, okay? All right, but anyhow, in terms of the effects of doing sauna. So an infrared sauna, everyone, uses infrared light rays, all right? So like, when you stand in front of a window and that sun is shining in on you, those are infrared rays that heat you up very deeply and very fast, all right? And the thing that's significant about infrared rays is that they heat you up equally to a depth that is about 3 centimeters deep, all right? So the skin surface is as hot as it is 3 centimeters deep underneath the skin. Now the effect of that kind of heating is that it causes toxins to be moved out of your tissues into the bloodstream, of which about 20% of those toxins get sweated out. The other portion go to your liver, where the liver transforms them from a fat-based toxin into a water-based toxin. They then get moved out into the intestines, and in the intestines, they get mixed in with your poop, and you poop them out if you're able to convert them from a fat toxin to water toxin. Okay, so one point I need to make about infrared saunas is 20% of the detox effect is sweating. The other 80% still has to go through your liver and your intestines. So if you're going to do infrared sauna, make sure to help support your detox that you are also supporting your liver by either being on glutathione, and for that I like a product called Trifortify Orange or the new Trifortify Watermelon. Yes, Research Nutritionals has now changed their flavor so you have a watermelon too. And that is a liposomal glutathione. Glutathione is the master detox chemical used by the liver to pull toxins out, okay? You need to give your liver glutathione if you're going to be doing infrared saunas on a regular basis, all right? And so Trifortify Orange or Trifortify Watermelon, 5 milliliters 1 time a day, okay? And then make sure you have a regular bowel movement. So you have a bowel movement about once a day so that you poop those toxins out too, okay? So that's critical. Now, when you are heating from here down because you're laying with your head out, you actually are heating your whole body though, right? The way the body responds, whenever you get heated in one area, that heat is distributed into the rest of the areas of the body. And so you're not causing the spirochetes to go go into your head. Your whole body is getting heated and all the blood vessels in your body are dilating open and your whole body is releasing those toxins, okay? No, I don't think that this would cause spirochetes to jump up to your brain to go and hide because your head's getting as heated up as the rest of you is getting heated up, okay? All right. And that's just because the mechanisms of heat distribution in the body is if you heat here, you're going to be heated up here as well too. The body will distribute that heat. All right. All right. Thanks, Charlene, for that question. And good luck to you. Oh, I got to show everyone those detox articles. Let me just go ahead and do that real quick. All right, let's see here. Go over here into the chapters, and we want to look in the chapter called Detoxification. All right, take a look at this one article called Mold and Lyme Toxin Illness, where I talk about this HLA-DR defect, okay? That's one of the genetic defects. And the other article that you should take a look at is this one here called MTHFR detoxification, a Lyme bite, okay? All right, so take a look at, oh, and then here's my article on far infrared saunas, all right, where I talk about you need to have bowel movements and you need to support the liver. So anyhow, all of these you can find here in this chapter, okay? All right, Charlene, thank you for that question. Good luck to you. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. What can you take for the headache relief from Bartonella babesia or HHV6 virus if ibuprofen and acetaminophen does not work? Wow. Hold on here just a minute. Okay, so headaches. So one part of the headaches, there's multiple components to headache, okay? So one part is cytokine related, all right? So increased inflammation from cytokines, all right? Acetaminophen and ibuprofen don't deal with cytokine inflammation. They deal with a different kind of inflammation, which is prostaglandin-based inflammation, but they don't deal with cytokine inflammation, all right? So I've already mentioned tonight curcumin or Fiber Boost or both, all right? Or for more ideas, take a look at the article again that I've written about cytokines. I showed that to you just a few minutes ago, all right? The other thing that is useful for headaches when you have them sometimes is to raise magnesium in your blood and to do that 400 to 600 milligrams at night. Again, the magnesium malate that I mentioned earlier tonight is the kind of magnesium that I would use for that, okay? All right. And then the other thing is I would support detox. Sometimes getting some of the toxins out by using glutathione can be helpful too. And if all that fails, sometimes you have to use medicines that raise a chemical in your brain called GABA or act like GABA. So one way to raise GABA in the brain. So our nerve cells in the brain have a group of receptors called GABA benzodiazepine receptors, okay? That's the receptors where if you put more GABA or something that acts like GABA on a GABA receptor, it regulates pain. It also induces sleep, all right? So for instance, one of my favorite herbs for sleep is something that can help with pain. It's something called L-theanine. L-theanine is a component of green tea. It's a non-caffeine component of green tea, all right? 100 milligrams. And what happens is in the brain, it's converted into GABA. And then all that GABA binds to that benzodiazepine GABA receptor, which can put you asleep, okay? So as an example, a common prescription sleep medicine, which is Ambien, binds to the GABA benzodiazepine receptor. That's how it's inducing sleep, okay? So sometimes you can do the similar effect with the L-theanine. If you're going to use L-theanine for sleep, you want to take anywhere from 200 to 600 milligrams at night. You can also use L-theanine for pain management, in which case you can take up to a total of 1,200 milligrams throughout the day, all right? But you would divide it into 3 or 4 times. Keep in mind as you're dividing it that as you start low at 100 milligrams, say 4 times a day, for instance, and it may make you drowsy at first, and which if it does, give it about 2 or 3 days before you increase the dose and then increase from there. Okay, so that's another thing that you can use. Now, if that doesn't work, other prescriptions you can use for headaches, there's a whole bunch of them. Most of them are anti-seizure medicines. So one would be gabapentin, something called Topamax, something called Lyrica. You can use antidepressant medicines like nortriptyline, imipramine, desipramine. These are things you would need to talk to your prescribing doctor about, but those are ways of regulating pain, headaches as well too. All right. But first of all, where I would start is get on curcumin, consider doing the fibro boost. Of course, your ibuprofen, your acetaminophen aren't going to work because it's the wrong kind of inflammation chemicals that they're trying to go after. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Lisa. And thanks for that question. All right. Hello, Janie. Let's see. Good evening, Dr. Ross. Good evening to you, too. Thank you for your time. You're welcome. When you have been diagnosed with Lyme, should you take steroids? No. Well, 99% of the time, no. However, if you're already on them, sometimes you have to slowly taper off. Okay. So why are we opposed to steroids in Lyme? Well, steroids suppress your immune system. Guess what happens with Lyme when the immune system is suppressed? Well, it takes off. Okay. It gets more active. Now, there are times, though, that I will have people still use their steroid nose sprays that they use for their allergies or their steroid inhalers that they use for asthma because minimal amounts of the steroids would likely be absorbed into your bloodstream. But ideally, even if you can get off of those, it would be a better idea to get off of those as well, too. But generally, steroids are not good because they suppress the immune system, which is either going to make it harder to treat your Lyme or it's going to allow Lyme to get more active as the immune system gets knocked out of the picture. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question. Let's see. Hi, has this started? Yes. This must be from quite a while ago, about an hour ago. Let me get rid of that. All right, let's see here. Hello, Sue. Let's see. What might be the significance of a TSH reading of 0.0? T3 is 1.4 and T4 is 1.4. I'm taking 60 milligrams thyroid daily. Thanks for your help. All right. So thyroid, so TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. All right. It's a chemical made by a part of your brain called the hypothalamus pituitary. It is made based on the brain's interpretation of whether the brain, the hypothalamus pituitary, thinks that you have enough thyroid. All right. All right. So for it to correctly make TSH, it has to be unimpaired. All right. All right. Now, what it does is, so TSH talks to your thyroid and says, make thyroid. Now, if the brain thinks that there is enough thyroid, it makes normal levels of TSH. If it doesn't think there's enough thyroid, it starts yelling at the thyroid saying, make more thyroid, the way we kind of yell at our kids, for instance, right? So we want them to hear us better, even though they hear us even when we talk quiet and they just ignore us. But so what you wanted, so the TSH, if the brain thinks there's not enough thyroid, it's going to scream at the thyroid. So you should have high TSH if you have low thyroid. Okay. All right. Then the other situation is if the brain interprets that you're having too much thyroid, it will start whispering to the thyroid. It really doesn't want the thyroid to make anything. So it makes low levels of TSH or stops making the TSH altogether. All right. So now that's in a healthy, functioning hypothalamus pituitary. Now, one of the things that can happen when you have a cytokine excess state, the model that I like to use is I think what happens is that part of the brain effectively gets drunk. All right? All right, it's drunk on cytokines. All right. Now we know that drunks can talk, right? They still talk, they still say things, but who knows if it's accurate? Just like the brain, when it's drunk on cytokines, may not be accurate. That's been that's how I look at thyroid in this illness. That's what I have found. Okay. So I usually don't make decisions about treating thyroid in Lyme based on TSH readings because I think they're erroneous. What I will do is I look to make sure that I keep my T3 and my T4 thyroid levels within normal range, because going above normal range may lead to things like osteoporosis, for instance, okay? And I take over for the brain and I do my own assessment as to whether I think a person has low thyroid or not. And I do that based on looking at symptoms. And so low symptoms of or symptoms of low thyroid can be cold intolerance, hair loss, dry skin, weight gain. Those are things that I'm going to look at. I'm going to consider. The one that I find most telling is actually whether they have cold intolerance. And by cold intolerance, what I mean is, do they have to wear a lot of layers to stay warm compared to everyone else in the house? Okay, are you the person having to wear a lot more layers? All right. All right. So I hope that helps give you some ideas there. So to help you figure out whether this is a good level of thyroid, I would need to go through those questions with you. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Sue. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Emily. You see, I have been in treatment on oral antibiotics for 2.5 years. And the last 4 months, they have become mostly ineffective to me, often causing a lot of neuro issues, anger, and fear. I am currently on your antifungal protocol with paleo diet, and it helps to some extent. Do you know why this might be happening? So, Emily, I would probably, to really tease this out, I would be good if you and I could actually do a visit, and I'll show you how you might consider doing that here in a minute. All right, but let me just give you a general idea. So, generally, and I think you're on the right pathway here, but so when somebody has Lyme and they have been doing better and suddenly they go backwards, in my experience, 80% of the time it is due to too many yeast moving into the intestines. That's why I think you're onto something. All right. Now, the symptoms that would make me also think about too many yeast instead of just other than just the decline you've had is increased sugar or carb cravings. Now, I know you may be controlling your carb cravings with the paleo diet, but do you still have those carb cravings? Okay. Do you still, are you still very interested in getting that sugar more so than usual? Sometimes if you have too many yeast in the intestines, you can get skin rashes or acne, and that's because of an interaction with the skin of a toxin released by yeast that leads to making it easier to have skin rashes or acne. All right. I'll consider whether somebody has sugar cravings, whether they have increased intestinal gasiness or bloating. If they're a woman, do they have increased vaginal itching or vaginal discharge? Also consider whether there might be difficulty swallowing. Sometimes if you get yeast, it can even be up here in the food pipe, and you'll have a lot of difficulty swallowing as a result of that. Okay. Now, the herbal options to treat yeast take time, and they don't work as well as prescription options. Okay, so if you're following my plan and it's herbal, it may be that the herbs just aren't going to work for you. The herbal options will take about 2 to 3 months to get under control. My favorite prescription options would be a nystatin diflucan combination. And I'll show you everyone where you can read about my options in a minute. But that tends to work within a month. Usually within 2 to 3 weeks, things turn around nicely. The other thing, Emily, you might want to consider is if you are still on your antibiotics and you're trying to get rid of yeast and you're not getting better, you may need to temporarily halt those antibiotics as well, too. Okay? All right. Now, I would say one thing, though. If you are treating for Bartonella and Babesia, be careful about stopping those because you'll have to start all over. Bartonella and Babesia replicate every 24 hours or so, and that means that those germs will get active very quickly if you're not done treating them, okay? But at this point, if what you're really treating is Lyme, it is okay to stop the Lyme germ treatment periodically because it replicates so slowly that sometimes it can be even 6 weeks to 8 weeks before you start getting symptomatic from stopping that antibiotic, okay? It won't come back that fast, basically, all right? All right, so I want to show everyone, do a quick screen share here. All right, so going back to the Treat Lyme book again. All right, so if you want to have a visit with me where I come to you through the internet, take a look at this tab called the Online Consult tab. And I urge you to read all the way through it, including the how it works, the disclaimer, and the requirements section, okay? So basically, I can visit with you online. And I can, in this type of a forum, I don't get to physically examine you. And so therefore, I am prevented in this type of a situation from prescribing for you or from ordering tests. But I can give you a good recommendation of what to do. And if it happens to involve prescriptions, then you could take that up with your provider. You can show them on my medical visit note. You can bring it to them and see if they'll be willing to do that, okay? And it's through this service, for instance, that I help a lot of people in the United Kingdom, for instance, manage their Lyme disease, people from far ends of the United States as I'm out here in Seattle, okay? But it's something for you to consider and take a look at that, all right? All right, and then in terms of the other thing I want to show people is regarding yeast, take a look at the germ control and more section in the yeast chapter. And then in terms of yeast, you can look at this article, A Silent Problem, Do You Have Yeast? I mean, it can be pretty significant. And then this is the article called Kills Yeast, A Brief Guide, where I give all of my various options that you can use to treat yeast, okay? And so take a look at that for various options. And I even in this article give you the relative chance of success of those various options as well too. All right, let me go back here. All right, Emily, good luck to you. Thank you for that question. Hi, Susan. I clicked earlier on a question where you said, hi, doctor, and then there was nothing. I think I have found the other part of your question. I'm glad you tried again. Let's see, here's my question. This is regarding sublingual progesterone for brain damage caused by mold and or Lyme. It is used for traumatic brain injury, successfully helping to restore normal function. With my son's chronic illness of years, can it help? Susan, I'm stumped on this one, and I periodically do get stumped, okay? I haven't seen progesterone used for people with traumatic brain injury. I'm not familiar with it being used this way, so I can't comment. I haven't tried it this way in my practice either. The one thing that's interesting about these webinars is I have learned a lot here. So people bring things to me that I have to go investigate, and I slowly decide whether it's a good idea or not based on what I see in my practice. So it's an idea I'll have to look into. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, but I'm sorry I don't have a good response for you. And thank you for sticking with it in terms of trying to get your question posted here too. All right. Good luck to your son. Good luck to you too. Thank you. Hello, Randy. Let's see. You suggest I take 5 milliliters of Cryptolepis 3 times a day. 1 milliliter is 15 drops. That's 75 drops 3 times a day. Is that excessive or correct? I also take Banderol Cemento. It sounds reasonable to me, but I mean, I haven't actually gone ahead and measured the drops. So you would know better than me in terms of the measurement. I just have people take it as milliliters, and they actually use a milliliter measuring device where it measures the milliliters, okay? But that sounds reasonable, but I haven't actually taken the drops and put it into a teaspoon to see, or into a 5 milliliters to see. I would measure it out to be sure, all right? All right, thank you for that question. Hello, let's see. Hello, Sandra. Let's see. And hold on here a minute. Hello, Sandra. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Ross. After 9 months undiagnosed, I was treated with ampicillin for 8 months. I now have neurological symptoms and was put on burning. Does this mean it's working? So Sandra, I guess I would need to, I may not be able to answer this entirely for you. So what a Herx, there's the potential of side effects, okay? So, and I can't quite tell without more information whether this is a side effect you're having or whether it's Herx. It could be a Herx, all right? So let me give you some ideas to consider so you can help figure out whether this is a Herx. So Lyme disease symptoms are excess cytokine symptoms, all right? So what a Herx looks like is usually a worsening of cytokine symptoms. And the reason the Herx is that is what happens in a Herxheimer reaction is the immune system sees the dead Lyme germ parts, if you will, and reacts by making more cytokines, all right? And so usually what happens is the major symptoms you have, which are your excess cytokine symptoms, they're the ones that get worse. All right. And so usually that means more fatigue, difficulty thinking, pain in the areas where you already have pain. So to help you look at this, I would consider, have the majority of the symptoms you already had as you started treatment gotten worse? If so, that's probably a Herx reaction. If you need more help, though, teasing it out, I'd be glad to talk with you in one of those one-to-one consults. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Thank you. Hello, Charlene. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have a problem. Oh, we already did this one. You posted it twice. I got to it earlier, though. Thank you. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Hi, Marty. Good to be here. Wondering if you could please touch on your protocols for treating SIBO and Lyme. So, SIBO, everyone, stands for small intestinal bowel overgrowth. And this is an area, I'm really not the greatest expert in this area, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview, okay? So to see if you might have, so what happens in SIBO is you get bacteria from the large intestines, works its way up into the small intestines through what's called the ileocecal valve, which is the end of the small intestines where it meets the large intestines, right around where the appendix is actually. There's a small valve that is supposed to keep things flowing one direction, okay, down through the large intestines, all right? But bacteria can work its way back up. And if it does work its way back up, it can give you a lot of gassiness and bloating and discomfort. Now, the way to see if you have this is a breath test where they measure various gases, okay? And there are some take-home kits that you can use. Now, I haven't been using them, and I can't verify whether they're accurate or not, because generally what I do with SIBO is I send my patients, I'm wondering if they have it, off to somebody that specializes in SIBO, because it's one of those areas I just haven't chosen to become the most expert on, okay? But with the SIBO breath test, if you have certain gases that you produce and they're measured, then you have SIBO. And if that happens, you're supposed to stop probiotics. And probably one of the better agents to treat it is a prescription medicine called rifaximin, also known as Xifaxan. Boy, I'm not even knowing the dose off the top of my head, but usually 14 days of treatment on that. All right. Now, if that doesn't work, there are other protocols that I'm aware of, but I'm not expert on. All right. So that's about as much as I know, but I think that can give you some working knowledge on it. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Lisa. Hello, Penny. Let's see. Just to say thank you for conducting these webinars and being so. You're welcome. Thank you for recognizing that, Penny. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see, Val. I see that I've got another one of your questions posted here. Same one I answered earlier about the CBD oil. I'm gonna get rid of that. All right. Hello, Catherine. Let's see. What do you think of Protomyxoa rheumatica? I heard some Lyme doctors assume every Lyme patient has it and treat it. Do you diagnose or treat it? I think it's a big hoax. that may sound kind of strong, but the theory of this idea of something called Protomyxoa rheumatica has been developed by a physician named Dr. Fry. And it's very interesting to me that his major treatment recommendations are basically the same things we would use for Babesia and for Lyme. So, in treating it and doing the things that he recommends, we're actually treating Lyme and often Babesia too. So I think those are the problems. The Protomyxoa rheumatica, I think in my opinion, is not a real problem. I think it is an infection that exists even in healthy people, and I don't treat for it. I do treat for Lyme, and I do treat for co-infections. And so I use some of the same things that he would use for the Protomyxoa. But I don't think Dr. Fry has done any adequate work to show that this is something that really is a problem, other than showing that it does exist. But I can tell you, even in treating it, often people get better, and they still have evidence of it being under the microscopes. I just think it is I don't think it's a real infection to be concerned about. And anyhow, that's my opinion on it. All right. Very good. Thanks, Catherine. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Are you able to discuss Lyme and ozone, please? A lot of Australians are having ozone therapy done in Cyprus, but I'm concerned that I've heard that IV ozone does not go intracellular. Would love your feedback and take on it. All right. So I'm not, Lisa, I'm not a big supporter of what I call oxidative medicines to treat Lyme. And oxidative medicines would be ozone, whether it's IV or whether it is rectal ozone, hydrogen peroxide, whether it is IV or you bathe in it, for instance. Other forms of oxidizing agents is high dose vitamin C. Yeah. So vitamin C, at low doses, we consider to be antioxidant, but at high doses, like 30 to 50 grams a day, you have to do that IV actually, can turn into an oxidizing agent. All right. So what do oxidizing agents do? Well, oxidizing agents damage genetic material and they damage fat membranes. And so what they do with germs is they damage the fat membrane covering of the germ and they damage the genetic material and they can kill it. All right. Now, germs don't have antioxidants, and so they're really affected. Right. We have antioxidants. So our cells have antioxidants that are able to deal with the effects of the ozone. However, there are no long-term studies that show that regular use of ozone isn't actually damaging to us. And I get concerned about that. I get concerned that we're damaging our own mitochondria, that we're which are the energy factors in our cells that also have a fat membrane, that we're damaging our own cells. And I don't think it's worth it for the limited benefit I see that comes out of it. All right. So I see that people that get ozone or hydrogen peroxide or high dose vitamin C may get benefit, but it's only about 40% of the time. I think there's great long-term risk involved, and I just do not recommend doing it. All right, so those are my thoughts on it. Do I think it gets an intracellular Lyme? Probably not, because in the intracellular space, the antioxidants that our cells make to protect themselves would probably neutralize any effect of the ozone as well, too. All right? All right. Thanks for that question. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Is it best to take magnesium topically with magnesium oil or intravenous instead of orally to not feed the Lyme? This was mentioned on the Klinghardt website. So I know Dr. Klinghardt has this idea. And Dr. Klinghardt has a lot of ideas. I think Dr. Klinghardt is a brilliant doctor. Dietrich Klinghardt, everyone is out here in the Seattle area where I am. I think he's brilliant. I think he's crazy brilliant. All right. And what I mean by that is some of his stuff is really good. I think he lives on the edge of thinking. All right. And he comes up with some really novel ideas that can be good. And I think some of his stuff is just flat out wrong. And just flat out wrong. And I think this is one of those ideas. So Dr. Klinghardt is correct. I mean, magnesium, Lyme needs magnesium. All right. But we need magnesium too. And in fact, Lyme is going to survive on the same things we do. All right. Now, we shouldn't starve ourselves to starve Lyme because ultimately we need those chemicals. So I use magnesium. I don't think it impairs the ability for people to get better. I haven't seen that happen before. I think Dr. Klinghardt's got an interesting idea, but I think he's taken it too far, actually. All right. Thanks for the question, Lisa. Hello, Tuan. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Marty. What do you think about working with Lyme and working at a place with possible exposure to mold? Is it worth the risk knowing that I need to earn money to pay bills every month? So, Tuan, as I mentioned earlier tonight to everyone, and take a look again at the whole article that I've written about Lyme and mold toxicity issues. And the issue with mold toxins is if you're being exposed and you are one of the 25% of people that are unable to remove them, they may be triggering cytokines, and that can have the same effect that Lyme does in triggering cytokines. All right, so they can look the same. So, ideally, it would be good to see if you happen to be one of the 25%. And one way you could do that and see if they actually are getting in you, those mold toxins, you may have the ability to remove them. One way to see if you're not being able to remove them and break them down is to see if you pee them out. and that would be to do a test through a lab called Real Time Labs out of Texas. The difficulty is it's a urine test. It's a $795 test, so it's expensive, all right? The other option you have is if you have to earn a living and you have to go in that environment, is to be on a binder that will take those toxins and remove them if you happen to be not able to get rid of them on your own, all right? So what's supposed to happen is when you have, so in 75% of us that don't have this problem, our immune system will see the mold toxins and will tag them for removal. And once they've been tagged, they'll get broken down by the immune system and they get removed, okay? Now, if you're one of the 25% that can't tag them correctly, those toxins go to the liver. The liver takes them from a fat-based toxin and does not transform them into a water-based toxin. So they get moved out into the intestines as a fat-based toxin. If they had been transformed like the liver is supposed to, transform them into a water-based toxin, they get mixed in our poop and we poop them out. But if they're not transformed, they go out fat-based and they get reabsorbed. And you just get this swimming pool of toxins. It just keeps going round and around and around, and it keeps inflaming the cytokines, okay? So, or triggering cytokines. So what you can do is to try to bind them. And so one of the things you could do is to use cholestyramine. I talk about it in the article. Other possibilities would be to look at doing some bentonite clay or charcoal. And I also talk about those in the article as well too, all right? And I showed you that article earlier tonight. Actually, let me in case you didn't see it, let me show you again. All right, so I'm back in the Treat Lyme book. And we'll go up here. I'm going to take a look at the chapter on detoxification. Take a look at this article called Mold and Lyme Toxin Illness, okay? All right. And in here I tell you how to treat it as well with the binders, including the timing of how to use them. All right. Thanks for that question, Tuan. Good luck to you. Hello, Susan. Let's see. P.S. By the way, I love your Treat Lyme book. A small price to pay for. Thank you for recognizing that. It really is disheartening the way that I see that I get beat up for charging for it sometimes. I think it's a valuable resource, and I don't think it's that badly priced considering all the information that I put in and that I update periodically as well too. But thank you for recognizing. I appreciate that. Hello, Kelly. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. How do you tell the difference between a post-infection syndrome and chronic Lyme disease? Thank you for these helpful webinars. Good question. Hold on, I got to drink some water here. Okay, so the infectious disease doctors have coined this term called post-infection Lyme or post-infection syndrome, okay? And so the infectious disease doctors in this country and also up in Canada and across the world have this opinion, and it's an interesting opinion because it's really not based on any good research, that Lyme is always easily treated with 1 month of antibiotics. And so they postulate that, or they hypothesize, they've come up with this fantasy idea that when people don't recover from Lyme, that they have something called post-Lyme syndrome, which is, it could be that Lyme triggered an injury that is permanent. It could be their idea of post-Lyme syndrome is maybe it's that Lyme has triggered an autoimmune illness where the immune system is attacking you. One of their other fantasy ideas about post-Lyme syndrome is that having had Lyme in you, there is a debris left in you of the Lyme germ that triggers the ongoing immune system reaction, okay? And they have a whole host of other what I call fantasy ideas about why people don't get better, all right? Now, what's interesting, though, is that there are numerous animal and human studies that show that Lyme lives well beyond 1 month of antibiotics, okay? But yet they ignore those studies. They also do not think, the infectious disease doctors think that long-term treatment has been shown to be beneficial, so long-term antibiotics. And so therefore, they also say that it can't be effective to use long-term antibiotics. Therefore, it must be this thing called post-Lyme syndrome, all right? So now, when they say that there are no effective study, or there's no studies that show that long-term treatment works, they are focusing on 4 studies that have been done that are of what we call high-quality science. So high-quality science is something that's called a double-blind, randomized, controlled study. All right. So what happens in those kind of studies is people are given a placebo or they're given an active agent. Okay. And those people getting those are over on this side. They don't know if they got the active ingredient during the study or whether they got a placebo, right? The researchers over here that are looking at them, collecting and gathering information about what's happening during the study, they don't know who got what either, all right? So they're blind over here to who got what. The people getting the stuff over here are blind, all right? That's called a double-blind study, all right? The reason we develop studies like that is that so no one can use their own biases to determine the outcome. There's only been 4 of those done in Lyme. And of those 4, my side, those of us that treat Lyme, look at them, and we think that 3 of them did show benefit. The other side, the infectious disease doctors, those ones that have come up with the fantasy diagnosis called post-Lyme syndrome, they look at those same studies and they think that none of them showed benefit. All right. That's great. I mean, we can argue with them over science. I mean, I think they're wrong in how they're interpreting those. But the biggest problem of their studies, these studies, is the longest one done was only 3 months. And to treat Lyme, most of us find is an average of 2 years to get recovery, okay? So before saying that somebody has post-Lyme syndrome, I think we need to give them an ongoing treatment of either herbal or prescription antibiotics. And we also need to make sure that we have corrected all the other things that can get in the way of their healing, all right? Now, it is possible that the infectious disease doctors are correct for a certain subset of people with Lyme, that really what is left is an autoimmune illness triggered by having had Lyme in them, all right? And so at a point, there are times in my treatments that I will start to treat more for autoimmune illness. And to do that, I like using a alternative medicine treatment called low-dose naltrexone. I'm not going to have time to go into that, but let me show you something you may want to take a look at here. I do a quick screen share. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to go into the chapters. Take a look at this chapter called Can't Get Better, Do This. This is where I talk about all the things that could go wrong that keep you from getting well. All right, and so one of those is the mold and Lyme toxin illness. Another one is biofilms. Another one is you get mitochondria injury, chronic virus infections sometimes. But in here, one of the things that can help is this low-dose naltrexone. And low-dose naltrexone is a way of treating autoimmune illness triggered by Lyme. Take a look at that later, okay? All right. And if you're looking for if you're looking for the things you should consider before saying that nothing is going to work, take a look at this chapter. This talks about all the things, other things you should do if you're not getting better by around 6 to 9 months. Start looking at some of the ideas in this chapter, okay? Oh, let me try to go back here. All right. So Kelly, thank you for that question. All right, everyone. That is it for me for tonight. That's been an hour and a half of having fun with you all. I do enjoy doing these, although after an hour and a half, even I'm ready to go home. And I can tell you that Halo and Thor, the Basenjis that sometimes are hopping around here, they didn't hop around tonight, but they're starting to glare at me. Thor is right over there. He's been looking at me. They're wanting to go home for their night walk, okay? So I'm going to have to get them out of here soon. Anyhow, I've enjoyed visiting with you tonight. Tomorrow morning around, again, 6 to 6:30 a.m. Seattle time, which is on the west coast of the United States here. Here in one of the remaining liberal non-Trump zones, I might add. I'll have it ready for you around 6 to 6:30 in the morning our time, okay? And then I will also tomorrow morning in that email have a sign up for the next set of webinars that will begin in March. I am going to take next week off though. And so I look forward to being able to do those with you too. Here in a second, I'm going to take you all over to the Treat Lyme book. As I terminate the webinar, you will be transferred over to the Treat Lyme book. And I would appreciate, for those of you that want to support the efforts here, please subscribe if you haven't done so. And the way you can do, and you're going to find it helps support this, which helps support other people that have the illness, okay? But the other thing is there's great resources there, right? There's a lot of practical information you can find that will help you improve your treatment, okay? As many people were saying tonight as well, too. So I'd encourage you to do that. That's it for now. Take care, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.